What's up, everybody? Fortune here. Thank you for joining me today. A few days away here in 2025 from starting my first thru hike of the year. If you haven't seen the video of the announcement of what I will be doing this year, check that out. 3 different trails, 3 different thru hikes. To start, that might be it, or there might be more. I'm a spontaneous guy, so I have been known to add things on as I go. But that's not what this video is about. This is a few days late, but better late than never. I wanted to recap and kind of reflect on 2024. It was a year, to say the least. A lot of ups and downs. What started as an epic journey never stays an epic journey too long before you start getting the obstacles and things maybe going wrong or just the trials and tribulations. It is still an epic journey, but it's not as enjoyable during those times, but something you have to push through in order to get to the end. And today, that's what I want to talk about, is 2024. It's in the books. It's in the bag. But today, I'm going to talk about, in a nutshell, what that year was like, and looking forward to the future. So let's begin. In January of 2024, I headed out to Atlanta, where Ron Shuttle picked me up to bring me to Amicalola Falls to start my thru hike. I got my hang tag on January 31st, but technically didn't get started till the 2nd of February. And that was because I had some side trails and other things that I wanted to do before I started out on the trail. The AT was beautiful. As you well know, or as many of you know, I actually did the AT the year before as well, and I started about 2 weeks later. It was still winter, but it was just a lot different. A little bit of warmth mixed with the cold caused a lot of fog. It was pretty much all fog through all of Georgia. I didn't hardly get any views at all. This was the exact opposite though. This last year in 2024, as every day I got views. It was a couple days after a big ice storm had went through. But when I got there, everything had melted off for the most part. There was still little tiny bits of ice, but not that much. Hardly any snow on the ground until I hit North Carolina. But just crystal clear skies. And I think that was because it was so cold. Or it was so cold because there was no clouds in the sky. And a lot of times when there's no clouds in the sky in winter, that means it's cold. There's no covering there, insulation. It was getting up to about 50 during the day, maybe 60 some days, but pretty much 20 every night for several days or weeks, or the majority of a few weeks at least. But it was epic. I was getting grandeur views every which direction. I was getting perfect sunsets, perfect sunrises. Everything was going good. I was walking and hiking up those mountains like a well-oiled machine. As you know, that's what I live for, is climbing the mountains and standing on those summits. And there's plenty of them to put in the bag in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, through Virginia, and beyond. But just in those beginning parts, it was one right after another, and just great views the whole time. That kept going for quite some time, all the way up into Virginia. Now, I did hit some snow and ice in the Smokies, and I had about a 30-mile day, 29-something mile day into the in the Smokies up to Clingman's Dome. And then back down to Newfound Gap, where I'd gotten off with a friend, Physics. I'm sure you've heard me talk about Physics. He's not just a friend, he's become my brother over the last couple years, but we met each other in 2023 on the Appalachian Trail when he was, we were both doing a thru hike. He finished his, I ended up having to get off. You know that whole story in Massachusetts. It was a thru hike, just not a thru hike of the entirety of the trail. I'll probably talk about that a little later. But that's where we had met, is in 2023, and become tight as tight can be ever since then. Just like brothers from like our souls or something. I don't really know the way to say that, but it was destined that we meet in 2023 for sure. But he picked me up there, brought me back, and was going to bring me back. But one reason I was coming off because the weather was going to take a real turn for the worse. It was actually above freezing. There was just still a lot of ice up there, hard to, get any traction on or anything. But it was going to hit like 0 and 5 degrees for the next couple days. So I gotten off. I was going back, and then the weather got pushed back a day or two. So the cold weather was actually there when I went back. So going through the area, if you haven't seen it, check out what I ended up having to do with the Smokies. I won't go into detail on that right here because it really doesn't pertain to reflecting on what I'm reflecting on for the year as a whole, not going through everything that happened. But beautiful snow and ice coming into Max Patch all the way up to Hot Springs, and then it was kind of gone. But it gave me some of the best views that you could ever imagine from Max Patch. White and blues with ice and snow. I was freezing. It was like 5 and 10 degrees. This was after the big snow one day, and then the next day, actually it was 2 days of snow, 1 day of just really cold temperature, 1 night of cold temperature, and then this next day where most of these photos came from was that third day in which it was just ice and snow everywhere, but in the distance, the 3D type of look on the mountains with the depth from the snow. Oh my goodness. Otherworldly. Just beautiful. Best I've ever seen that area look at all, hands down. Went into Hot Springs and then beyond, and the snow was pretty much gone. I didn't see any more snow until Shenandoah, and that was a weird day. But everything was just cruising along, making great time. Pretty much averaging, and when I say average, let me rephrase that, because I was doing less than 20 miles a day average, but that's because I was taking a lot of zeros for March Madness and different things, some weather that that had happened and so forth. Never because of health or anything like that, but I was still making really good time. But that was because every day that I was hiking, which was most every day, I was doing 20, 25, up to 30 miles a day. So on a normal through hike, I'm not taking the zeros that I was this time through up to that point. And again, it was just, I just chose to. I never feel like I need the zero. Sometimes I take the zero though, just because I choose to do it. At the end of the day, it drives me insane. So I really don't like it. But sometimes I justify it in my head, like March Madness. I'm a huge Illinois fan, and they were doing quite well in March Madness. So I took a couple days watching them. And some other things as well. But getting back to the amount of time I got to where I wanted, I got to Shenandoah, and the weather was kind of turning cold, warm. And then all of a sudden I waited out a rainstorm. That was an all-day rain at the Axe Farm in Elkton, Virginia. And that's about halfway through Shenandoah. And then I got back on, and that day, out of nowhere, big pellets of hail started coming down, and then the hail turned to snow. If you've seen the picture, I'm just kind of standing there going like this with a bunch of snow behind me that wasn't supposed to be there. It was supposed to be 60 degrees or something like that, but that's Shenandoah for you. That's what people in that area will tell you, at least. That's the Shennies for you. I say that's the mountains for you, because that happens in all the mountains. The weather does what it wants to do. But basically got out of there, got through Virginia, and then I did the 4-state challenge. Really wanted to prove this to myself. The year before I did the 4-state challenge, from the same time, woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning, got on the trail, started heading off, got really tired about 20 miles in, decided to lay down in a shelter and take a nap. Didn't wake up for several hours. My 4-state challenge was shot. I wasn't going to do that this time. Woke up at 1 o'clock with fury, and it was a hot day and getting through it. And I had this big, long motivational speech. If you haven't heard it, check that out on the day of the 4-state challenge. It's here on the videos. You can check out any of the 2024 AT through hike, or you can just go to the playlist. And then for the AT through hike, and it's probably a little easier to find the videos that way, obviously in the order that they were recorded. But anyway, I had this big motivational speech that I wasn't going to stop. And I was doing this for me. I didn't care if anybody else cared about what I was doing or not, because it was for me. Why was I doing it? Because I was that man from the health problems I had several years ago that wasn't supposed to be able to do something like that. Well, I succeeded at the 4-state challenge. I believe, if I remember right, it took me about 19 hours for 42 miles. Took a day, got back on trail, headed through Pennsylvania. Everything went fine. I loved the rocks. They were beautiful. I got perfect weather to climb up Blue Mountain and to be able to get the big rocky section with no water, just some wind and not too hot, not too cold, like right in the 60s. The rocks, I loved them in Pennsylvania. A lot of people don't love them. I loved them. It wasn't the kind of rocks that, part of it is the kind of rocks that will twist an ankle, but for the most part, they were like walking on little stages and little platforms. So anyway, I got through Pennsylvania. I stopped in the Delaware Water Gap and I listened to some jazz while I'm there for a 0 day in which things started to break on me. My tent got some holes in it. My air pad got some holes in it. My shoes were falling apart, and they were falling apart a little earlier than they were supposed to. I could normally get about 500 to 600 miles out of my shoes. Because of Pennsylvania, they wore out a little quicker. So I had to get some shoes there. I had to, make some repairs. So I took a day and then started in New Jersey. And that's where things started turning a little bit. So in New Jersey, I had a fall in which it might have been the easiest part of trail on the whole Appalachian Trail, to be honest. It was flat. It was like black stone, but it was flat. And where I landed was like on a rock that almost felt like I was landing on black asphalt or something. It was hot and just, it didn't feel good. Ended up putting a big gash in my knee. It swelled up. Didn't hurt it long term. It just made it sore and painful. So I decided to slow down a little bit. I decided to take some time to let that heal. I still kept doing my miles, took a couple zeros in there, Neros, but slowed way down. And the other big reason I slowed way down is because I was getting a little too north too fast. Obviously, the winter time was still going on in New England, and I was definitely getting there a little quicker than I wanted to. So I slowed down and thought, I have plenty of time, let the knee feel better, let's not hurt the knee by pushing it too much while it's healing and swelled up. So that was that. Another thing that happened in the New Jersey and New York area, I had a personal thing, and I'm going to leave it at that. I don't need drama. I hate drama. I don't need judgmentalness. I don't need everybody's opinions on something that has nothing to do with them. Just something in my personal life that ended up causing a lot of stress and things I had to deal with, on that front, which, was just another weight on my shoulders, so to speak, that I had to deal with. It was one of those things that was, a rough thing that many humans have to go through, and I had to go through it and just keep pressing on, and that is what I did. And then after New York, you come into Connecticut and then into Massachusetts. Started having a little bit of plantar issue, having a little bit of, sore knees and sore hips. But I will tell you this right now, those of you who have not through something always hurts. I feel really good most of the time. I do have a high tolerance of pain. For those who've been following me for a while, you probably realized that when I walked around with a broken back on the PCT. I have a high tolerance of pain and I keep pushing through. You always have something to hurt. So if I'm saying that something was bothering me, it's bothering me more than just a normal everyday pain. It was just, getting a little bit sore, nothing I couldn't manage. There is a difference between pain and injury. This was pain. It was not an injury. It's just overuse and some things that I started doing to tweak it or help it out, do a little more stretching in specific areas and so forth. Definitely helped it out. So coming through Connecticut, coming through Massachusetts, I was coming through Massachusetts during my birthday in May. Things were going great. And then I hit Vermont, crossed the Massachusetts line into Vermont, and what was it, about 12 miles, I believe, to the road to get into Bennington, Vermont, which is the first town, which is where I was going to resupply, take a zero, and or at least a Nero, and then head back. And that's exactly what I did. Got off the trail, went to eat some food, went to the store, got my resupply, head back to the hotel room, getting ready to leave in the morning, and all of a sudden about 7 or 8 o'clock, it's like, man, what in the heck is wrong with me? I started getting a fever. I started having some pretty sore joints and aches. And I thought, this isn't right. I rarely get sick. Okay, now this is coming from someone who has had all kinds of problems with their body. But it's rarely the cold or the flu or anything like that. Heck, even when I had COVID back in 2021, it was so minor, and I, because of all the other problems I had on me, was really one of those high-risk people. But for some reason, when I get that, and it could be because I do have some autoimmune things going on in my body, so that might make my immune system fight those things off a little quicker. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm just talking. But I got really sick. And so I decided overnight, trying to break this fever that was not breaking, that I was going to have to take a zero the next day. So that's what I did. And then that second night, oh my goodness. I went from, okay, I think I'm feeling a little better, to boom, fiery flames come out of my body. Not really, but metaphorically. And just the highest fever I'd had since I had mono back in the in my early 20s. Oh, it was horrible. And then I start shaking uncontrollably for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And that scares me because I have that weak stomach and digestive area. And usually when I shake like that, I start vomiting. Once I start vomiting, I can't stop vomiting. So it was just this whole big thing that was starting to happen. Thankfully, I didn't get too sick to my stomach at that point. So here's how it is. You all heard me talk about Lyme during the trail. This is how it all went down. So that's what happened night one. Ended up taking night two. Ended up taking another zero. And then heading back to trail that following day, I started feeling like I was better. The fever felt like it was broke. I immediately went on doxycycline because I knew from what this wasn't a flu. This wasn't a cold. This wasn't any other kind of illness. This was Lyme. I just knew it. And so I started taking what I was supposed to be taking because you need to take that right away. I never did find that tick. The year before that, I had a tick. It ended up not being Lyme, but I ended up finding a tick embedded. This one I did not, but I have a lot of hair. I have a lot of beard. There's a lot of places a tick could hide it. I might have just never found it. So anyway, I went back to trail. And at some point, I'm going to have a video of, I don't know, my 5 or 10 or 15 worst days of hiking in my life. This is one of them. I go back to trail. I'm doing like a 20-mile section here. It's a normal day for me, no big deal. And from about 2 miles in, it was hell. I was sweating like I've never sweated in my life. I had headaches like I never had headaches in my life. My body was just so lethargic and hot, and it was weird. My sensations of nerves, everything was just jacked up and wrong. I kept going. A couple times I had to stop and get sick. And then I got to a point where I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't feel like I'm going to make it. And I can't turn around and go backwards now. So I kept going until I got to a shelter and I set up camp for the night there. And I realized that night that I had to get off the trail. Whether Lyme was still affecting me or the medicine from the Lyme was affecting me, I was being affected in a very bad way and probably a dangerous, stupid way. This is almost like the feeling I had in the desert when I got extremely dehydrated from a stomach flu and had to be rescued out and almost died that day on my first day of the PCT. It was having remnants of feeling like that. So anyway, I get off trail the next morning. Somebody picks me up, gets me off at, I think 4 or 5 miles later, there was a road that somebody could get me picked up. So thankfully I did that. I got off trail for a month. I was pretty jacked up, pretty sick. Nerves were on edge, the joints and pain and achiness was all there. I started feeling stronger. I was jogging every day. I was doing things to keep my body, strong and as I could, but at the same time resting it. So I go back to the trail a month later. From day one of being back on trail, I'm feeling somewhat strong, but I'm struggling with something that I've never had happen, and that was an extreme amount of sweat. Now, I sweat a lot. I do sweat a lot. Let me get a drink here real quick. I'm doing all the talking. You're not talking at all. So anyway, I get back to trail. I go through all of Vermont. I go through New Hampshire. And I'm in the whites. And I get to Webster Cliffs, which is right before the presidential range. It might even be classified as part of the presidential range to some people, but to me, it's right before the real presidential range, presidential traverse starts. During that time, I was suffering so bad. I got torn up on my feet one day from getting wet, and then they just started getting little cracks all over them and bleeding. I had to take a zero, but that wasn't the only problem. I was constantly dizzy. I was constantly having like extreme migraines, and migraines that wouldn't go away, and sore joints, just achy joints. I guess the big thing though was the sweat. Believe it or not, the sweating just worried me. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm drinking like a liter per mile or two of water, and I'm still dehydrated, and there's nothing I could do about it. So when I got to Webster Cliffs, I went up, came back down, started to do a 5-mile road walk, and there's like a hut situation there, a little hotel or something that's put on by the AMC and Appalachian Mountain Club. And I started to walk to there. I'm like, I'm going to stay there tonight, figure out if I'm getting off the trail or what I'm doing, because I'm not right. And I just taken a day and a half zero, or a zero and a Nero, like right before that. So I didn't need that. I knew I didn't need that. Something was wrong. Something was definitely wrong, and it was a hard decision, but I made that decision up on Webster Cliffs that it was over for me. But it wasn't going to be over unless it had to be over. I just needed more time. And I knew what it was. The Lyme was not gone yet. Or the effects of what the Lyme did to my body was not gone yet. So, long story short, off another month, got checked out by the doctor, all kinds of tests run, started getting stronger. During this time, during this month of being off, I decided, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish this up. But before I do that and have to get off again, I am going to go to, it just slipped my mind, the Foothills Trail, which is a 70-something mile trail. And I am going to thru hike that. But I'm not going to thru hike it like normal people would. I am going to hustle and I'm going to push myself to the brink. It's about a 95-degree period of the year. And I go to the Foothills Trail. And I decide I'm going to do it in 3 days. So that's 20 to 25 miles a day. That's what I did. So I get out there day one, I do my 25 or so, and then it's raining. Day two was soaked. I was soaked. Everything, my tent was soaked. I get about 16 miles in, it looks like it's going to rain again. I realize I need to stop and let this stuff dry out so I can get in a dry tent tonight. So I stop at 16. Now that, for you, my math majors out there, that's about 31. 31, is that right? 16, 25, 41. Wow, for my math majors. I'm like, that's not right. So it's 41 miles in 2 days. It's a 72-mile trail, which means I have to do 31 miles if I'm going to do it in 3 days. And that was the whole point. So I did it in 3 days. And I finished about, I think it was about 8 or 9 o'clock at night in the dark. But I did it in 3 days. I felt great. I felt strong. I was really hungry, but I felt great. I felt strong. I went back to the house where I was staying, and I decided, okay, there's one more thing I want to do. I want to add Mount Mitchell to my state high points. I've been wanting to do that. I was wanting to do that when I went through Irwin on the Appalachian Trail this year, but it was closed because of ice. So I wanted to do it. And so that was going to be my last one, my last test, so to speak. Run up Mount Mitchell and back down because I wanted to see how the elevation was going to mess with me. And I was fine. I was golden. I'm going back to the AT. It wasn't 2 days later. And I'm going back to the AT and starting where I left off on the presidential range, going through New Hampshire, finishing up the whites, have some more things that go on in my personal life that cause a great amount of stress, and some great things happen at the right time, in which that helped ground me and help my anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety issues and things because of all the sicknesses I've had and major illnesses I've had, and even what I still have going on in my body. I have a really high sensitivity in my senses, and when something stresses or gives me anxiety, it really affects every part of my body. It really kicks up the dizziness and everything else. So it was not safe for me in the mountains until I got that under control. And I just happened to have two young ladies in the Gorham area that happened to see me walking through town and stopped and talked to me, one of which had been watching me all year, and I was an inspiration to her. And just her telling me, and then she teared up and was emotional, and as she was talking to me, it just was making me emotional. My heart felt. We gave each other a hug, and she has no idea. She healed me that day and gave me the strength. I mean, she does know, because I have told her since then and posted it on Facebook and talked about it here on YouTube. But gave me the strength that day to continue on. I did do. I went through the New Hampshire, went into southern Maine. Had a really big day of rain in which I had an early day that in a shelter, stayed there eating all day right before I went to the infamous Notch in southern Maine. And boy, it's slipping my mind right now. Why can't I think of the Notch? Mahoosuc Notch, the one that's all tangled up. It's like a playground for adults, but it was a rough go. It would have been a rough go the day before when it was raining and 30 degrees. I went through quite a bit that day in high winds and rain. Decided, nope, I'm done. I'm not going through that until the next day. Went through it. There was one more day after that I had some rain, and then after that it was clear skies for like the next 2 weeks, sunny skies, starting to turn in the leaves. So 2 months off of trail, 153 days total to get to Baxter State Park. Started at the beginning of February, ending in September. I got to see all of the seasons. That was pretty cool. However, as I get into Baxter State Park, I have my campground. I have 5 miles left to the top of to Summit Katahdin. And here I go, walking to my cabin, and all of a sudden my back is locked up. Something I've never felt. Horrible spasms to the point it was making me, I don't know, almost like a paralyzed feeling to a certain degree. I took my backpack off to get some water. I'm like, man, I'm dehydrated, I need some water. I couldn't pick my backpack back up. I couldn't even get it off the ground, let alone put it on my back. Every time I moved, it's like, like through this area right here. I hadn't felt pain like that since it had gotten broken on the PCT. The pain level was the same, but I never had spasms before. That was the first time I've ever had spasms like that. It was debilitating, to say the least. Luckily, I had 2 hikers that walked through that was doing some hiking themselves, and they Meeting on the Rocks, that was their name, as a couple, and they just happened to be going by, and they were slack packing, so only one had a backpack, the other one did not, and they offered to carry that for me. I just wanted to go another mile or two to the ranger station and then see how it was, and so they helped me out. It was so hard to walk, I couldn't even get my water bottle to twist it off. I mean, it was insane. Long story short, I get to the campsite that night. I get my backpack at the ranger station, I head back to the campsite, and I'm there preparing for the next day to summit Katahdin and to end the Appalachian Trail through hike for the year. It wasn't looking good. I couldn't lay down. Once I lay down, I couldn't get up. I was in horrible pain. I was doing everything in the world to heal this, and it wasn't healing. Went through the night, got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I still didn't know if I was going to be able to do this or not. But if you know anything about me, I'm going to do everything in my power to do things that are hard or impossible. And I was having a lot of pain. And I decided to continue on. So continue on is what I did. And the back started to feel a little better as I would go. But I'm not going to lie. Scrambling up the rocks of Katahdin with a back that doesn't work too well and gives you sharp pains into your spine and spasms up at the weirdest and most random moments was a very hard feat, and probably not the smartest, to be honest, but I knew what my body could do, and I learned a way to kind of tweak it. I couldn't pull myself up with my left hand, but I could pull myself up with my right hand. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that was the opposite. I could pull myself up with my left hand, but not my right hand, because it would just send me into a spasm. So long story short, I made it to the top of Katahdin in a dramatic and painful way, but I made it. There was no quit and dying in this guy. So a weird year, a weird through hike, 153 days, but I made it to the top of Katahdin. It was a great year. I wouldn't change anything. Some things happened in the personal life that were trials and tribulations and tough goes, but I kept going. My back felt like it was broken again, but I kept going. Lyme hit me, and hit me much harder than I ever thought it would, but I kept going. It's who I am. I don't believe in quitting. So 2024 is wrapped up, and here comes a new year, and who knows what this year is going to bring, but I'm ready for it. It could be smooth sailing. It could be a whole set of tribulations and problems. I'll tell you what, it's just like life. There's always going to be mountains. There's always going to be valleys. There's always going to be storms. We just have to climb through them all. Let me go over some stats here real quick for 2024. It was a total of 2,671 miles. 2,197 of that was on the AT. The rest was side trails or 2 other trails that I ended up doing and through hiking. One which was, of course, one I just talked about, the Foothills Trail, and then the Art Loeb Trail. So I also through hike those in here in 2024 as well. A total of 508,294 feet of elevation. A total of 450 summits. It could be more than that. That was the least amount that I know it is, but it could be as much as 10 to 20 more than that I'm just missing in there. 3 trails in their entirety. One thing I like to do when I'm on a through hike is count the amount of wild animals I see on the trail. This does not count anything I see off the trail, like a shuttle ride or anything like that. It's only what I'm seeing live as I'm walking. So this year, this is fun to be able to share this on a video. I've never done this in the past. I just always keep it and document it and share it on Facebook or social media. Well, by the way, if you want to follow me on Facebook, that is Hiker Fortune. Just look up Hiker Fortune. You can follow me there as well. But the animals this year was 2 bald eagles, 1 owl, 146 deer, 2 raccoons, 5 wild ponies, 10 henries. Henries are black bears. For those of you who are new, I call all black bears henries. 2 gray foxes, 15 turkeys, 2 coyotes, 12 snakes, and 1 porcupine. Going through New Hampshire, the challenge up there of the 46 4,000 footers, I was able to finish 24 of those this year through the trail and side trails. And the New England 4,000 footers, there's 66 of those, and that includes Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. That is 34 out of 66. The 50 state high points, something else I'm doing. I was able to add 7 more of those this year for a total of 12 that I now have. I actually have more than that, but I just started documenting them and taking a photo at each one and climbing. I never drive, obviously. I climb those. So I started over a couple years ago, and I'm at 12. Those will go very quickly when I'm not on a through hike because I'll be obviously just somebody knows one after another. I hope you enjoyed the video, a little bit of tidbit of information. It was a great year, regardless of the obstacles. The beauty and majesty and freedom and just living life way outweigh any problems along the way. I wish everybody the best and a great 2025 and a life-fulfilling 2025. Get out there and conquer some things. Get out there and live life and live it to its fullest. 2025 is happening now. The daily videos of the thru hikes are going to be coming soon, so keep on this channel because it's going to be another epic year. Live life, my friends.